Hi there, welcome back to our tutorial series on YouTube brought to you by the O3 Schools JAMB app. I believe by now we've all downloaded our apps and we're practicing with it. So our topic for today is a man after God's heart. So the Bible records David as the man after God's heart, and in a previous class we've looked at David's early life, the story of David and Goliath, and how David came to be the king of Israel. Now for this class, we'll look at David's submission to the will of God. As well as his repentance and forgiveness. So we start with his submission to the will of God, and we'll look at two instances where David submitted to the will of God. The first is in 1 Samuel chapter 26, where David spared Saul's life. David spared Saul's life. The Ziphites told Saul that David was hiding in the hill of Aquila. And then Saul went there with his men. They camped by the road. David sent spies to confirm if he really was Saul. And when it was confirmed, he went to the camp of Saul at night with Abishai. When they got there, they found everyone asleep. The Lord had caused a deep sleep to come upon them. And Abishai urged David to kill Saul, telling him that the Lord had delivered his enemy into his hands. But David told him that no one could stretch his hand over the Lord's anointed and be blameless. The Lord can strike him down. His day to die will come, or he will go to battle and not return any other way, but Saul will not die at David's hands. So David only took Saul's spear and his jug of water, and they left the camp unseen by anyone. So David's refusal to kill Saul, that was anointed of God, is, shows that David was willing to submit to God's will. His refusal to kill Saul, despite Saul's threats and plans to kill him, David did not kill Saul when he had that chance to. Why? Because Saul was anointed by the Lord. So that shows David's willingness to submit. Then also another instance is in 2 Samuel chapter 12. When the child born to David by Uriah's wife fell ill, and David prayed to God, he laid on the ground, he refused to eat or get up, praying for God to heal the child. But when the child died, he got up, he worshipped God, he ate, he changed his clothes and all of that, accepting that it was God's will. He didn't fight God and was like, I prayed for the child not to die, and then the child actually died. It means God didn't know. He just accepted that that was God's will. So that was another instance that showed David's submission to the will of God. Then we looked at David's repentance. So we look at David's repentance. Now, during a war that the Israelites had with the Ammonites, let's say during a war between the Israelites and the Ammonites, David stayed in Jerusalem. He didn't go to battle. And one evening, while he was taking a walk on the roof of the king's house, he saw a beautiful woman taking her bath, and despite his messengers telling him that she was married, he still sent for her and he laid with her. Now, when she found out she was pregnant, she sent a message to David, and David sent for her husband Uriah from the battle. He wanted to cover up his sin, but Uriah refused to lay with his wife while Israel was in battle. Now, left with no other choice, David ordered for Uriah to be moved to the front of the battle, where he was eventually killed. After the death of Uriah and his wife's mourning, she became David's wife. Now, this displeased God, and he sent prophet Nathan to David. God sent prophet Nathan to David. Prophet Nathan told David of a parable of a rich man who, although he had excess flocks and herds, he took his poor neighbor's only lamb, prepared it, and offered it to his visitor. Now, outraged, David ordered for the death of that man after he had, done restitution to the poor man, when Nathan now explained that David is the person he was talking about. Now, immediately, David acknowledged that he had sinned against God, and God forgave him. God forgave David because he didn't make up excuses. He was truly repentant of the sin that he had committed. We see in Psalms chapter 51 that God will not turn away from a broken spirit and a contrite heart. So that's the difference between David and Saul. God forgave David, but he rejected Saul, because even when Samuel went to Saul and told him about his disobedience to God, Saul kept making excuses. He wanted to sacrifice it to God. He wanted to this and all of that, where Samuel had to even tell him that to obey is better than sacrifice. But in the case of David, he acknowledged his sin immediately without any excuse. David acknowledged his sin. He became truly repentant, which is why we see that God forgave David, but he did not forgive Saul. Now we head over to the O3 Schools JAMB app to check out for some questions, past questions that have been asked under this topic we've just treated. But before then, please don't forget to like this video, comment if you have questions down below, and also subscribe so you don't miss out when we upload new classes. Now here's a question from 2011. Do not destroy him, for who can stretch out his hand on the Lord's anointed and be guiltless? In the statement above, David was acknowledging God's role in A. Abishai's command, B. Saul's leadership, C. Samuel's priesthood, D. Elijah's prophethood. The answer is B. Saul's leadership. The only reason Saul became a king in the first case is because God sent Samuel to anoint him. So David was acknowledging God's role in Saul's leadership. Another question we have here says, David's behavior after Prophet Nathan accused him of murder and adultery showed his A. Justification, B. Repentance, C. Greed, D. Righteousness. B. Repentance. His behavior, where he immediately acknowledged that he had sinned against God, showed his repentance. Here's a question we have. Nathan told David that although God has put away his sin, he would still be A. made to weep and fast, B. bereaved of the child, C. visited with plague, D. required to make atonement. The answer is B. bereaved of the child. Although God forgave David his sin, he would still be bereaved of the child born to him by Uriah's wife. Why did God accept David, who killed Uriah and took his wife, but rejected Saul, who spared King Agag? A. David was from the favored tribe of Judah, while Saul was from Benjamin. B. David was a man after God's heart, while Saul was not. C. David was a singer of praises, while Saul was not. D. David humbled himself when he realized his sin, but Saul was stubborn. So we have D. David humbled himself when he realized his sin, but Saul was stubborn. It had nothing to do with where they were from. It's not because David was from the tribe of Judah, while Saul was from Benjamin, or what have you. It all boiled down to the fact that David was humble. He was repentant after he was told of his sin, unlike Saul that was giving excuses. Now, if you download the O3 Schools JAMB app, you will have access to many more questions. So if you are yet to get this app, waste no more time. Hurry now to Play Store to download your app.